not do something crazy in Germany? And I found two amazing people in Germany, and they're just amazing souls. So I invited them to share their wisdom with us because they've been practicing this bhakti love thing for some time and they have a lot of wisdom to share. So I wanted to introduce Gora. You can see her right there, and Govinda Priya. So our question today is primarily derived from this past week of traveling in Netherlands. As you know, last time we were in Belgium and then we had it in Netherlands. Now I'm in Germany. And there was a lot of questions regarding this, the suffering and the pain that we are experiencing in this world. So I thought, why not? Oh, Mark from Sardinia. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for joining us. And so I thought, why not invite these two beautiful souls to share some of their wisdom with all of us? And the question that often came about is this hidden contract that we all sign in this world. This hidden contract, what we mean by that, oopsie, what we mean by that is it gives us a very clear understanding of what is it that makes life so colorful and different for each and everyone having a very, very personal individual journeys, yet our perception and our experience of life is so personal, even though the experiences may be the same. So, what is this very interesting uh, construct of life that causes us to have such personal experiences that are very unique to us? And how do we try and make some sense of it? So, in other words, the struggles that we have in the world and why so much suffering, and how do we put a spiritual lens with one's personal experiences of that? So, I wanted Gora and Govinda Priya to shed some light on this topic, but primarily, I wanted to just say that there's an element in our lives. We can discuss it in four different layers, but the element in our lives is the samskaras, the impressions that is the first hidden contract that we are exposed to in life that we never chose. And it somehow chooses us, and we are encouraged and sometimes forced to face these contracts that we didn't even know existed. For example, I give you a simple example. A child grows up in this world. Say a little girl grows up and she, from a young age, is encouraged to get good grades. And whenever she gets good grades, we always compliment. You're doing great and you're doing perfect, and we give all these compliments. As a little child, there is an impression that is being made. And later on in life, becomes successful. She works really hard. She wants to be admired, appreciated. She's exhausted, overgives, overthinks. So then what happens with life is that because the society that she grew up in gave her a certain idea of what life is going to be like, she is bound by that contract that she lives now. And so recognizing this very interesting contracts. These are silent. She never asked for this contract, but it was given to her. And I just wanted to hear Gora and Govinda Priya to share more about how these contracts work and talk a little bit more about how these little experiences in our lives as little people, completely under the care and protection of our elders, we're given a contract that we never really wanted it. And yet we're living those contracts. We're bound by them. So, Gora, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on that, mm, I have few, and one is that receiving that contract that we are, I wouldn't say that we are not totally responsible for that contract. Maybe on some level, maybe before a birth, maybe because of karma, somehow we are living that and we are in that contract. If we are already in that contract, that means it's belonged to us, you know? So how to deal with that? I believe, you have in something in every contract. When you buy a house, there are very everything is plain how to do. So also I believe in that invisible contract, that we are giving tools from Krishna, that Krishna gave us the tools how to deal with that contract, how to deal with those situations. So sometimes they appear like very challenging, almost like one centimeter or maybe 2 meters more than we are able to. But nevertheless, there is no doubt that when the moment comes, when we are facing that contract, that we are at the same time getting the tools how to deal with that contract. This may be, we don't have to do it alone. Always, it could be in that those tools are our community we are building, the friends, the relatives, books, meditation, some kind of practice, but there are always the tools, always a help. And the point is never giving up, always standing up and always trying. And maybe we will not be able to get it from the first time, but we will get opportunity to try again. So this is one thought that I had, and the second is I don't know if you guys heard about narrative therapy. It's about the story we are telling yourself. We cannot change what is happening to us in our life because we are in that contract. But there is always stories we are building around that contract. For example, this and that happened to me because, and this because it's a narrative that we are telling, because I'm not valuable enough, because Krishna doesn't like me, because people don't like me, because I have such a bad karma. And the good point about those narratives is that we can change them. Even 20 years after they happen, we can change the narratives. We can change the story we are telling ourselves and others. And it may sound so convincing, the story, but those narratives, those stories can also be very helpful, but at the same time can be also something which is standing on our way. And just to be very flexible in our mind, to question those stories and to question the narratives that we are telling ourselves. So those are my two thoughts that I have about it.
Beautiful, Gora. Often when I think about this contract, it's not just one contract. We have signed so many hidden contracts. Your parents sign a contract, your friends, your teachers and your grandparents. There's a lot of contracts to go through. So that's a lot of contracts to live by, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not so easy. What do you think, Govinda Priya? How many contracts do you have and how do you deal with it?
At the beginning of this conversation, I was thinking, oh yeah, that I have this, and it was a similar thought as Gora, as in probably my story is that we also signed this contract knowingly or not knowingly. We may say unwanted contract, but by the nature of us being here already, there that is a proof that we did sign some contract. But as she was speaking, the question became so complicated and deep for me. I don't really have such a plain answer. I'm struggling with this answer, honestly. Uh, I thought about it many times as a teacher. I'm a kindergarten teacher. I sat through. I worked with days and days, looking at those kids, seeing that they're in relationship with their parents, and I wanted to intervene, make it better for the child. And then I would question myself, am I supposed to intervene? This child is here for this. So many, it's very complex. And then I had my own children, and I saw like all the life I'm providing and trying to make for them. I would even want to correct my husband because I knew better that my child needs this differently. And as a mom, I might have like more intuitive answer and this and that. And then I would be like, but he is her father. So even though I might see suffering, some suffering or whatever, it's so complex. It's so complex. These contracts. So I'm left in a field of unknown, and I'm left only with trying to make it conscious for me. That's the only thing I'm able to do now. So just trying to bring to surfaces this contract. As you said, there are so many to think about, that I was a cell in my grandma's uterus, in my mother's ovaries at one point, and that became my body today. Oh my God, that strikes me, like her life and how she felt, dealt with life, somehow contracted me today. And my mind explodes on that. And so I don't have an answer. I'm just trying to um, bring it bring it to the surface, these contracts, and cry them out most of the time. Just cry cry them out. That's it.
Thank you, Govinda Priya. Another thought I had was how, we have these contracts, and those contracts are so binding us that we don't really strive for excellence, but it's almost like we are reliving a contract that is completely signed against our will, and we are being completely forced to act to comply to those contracts, and we don't even know why. So in the yoga text, they talk about the contract, who actually signs the contract. And when we study the Bhagavad Gita and other wisdom text, it actually explains that actually it is the false identity, the ego, the ahankara in Sanskrit, is the one that signs the contract. Because that identity, it's a false identity, and it is not identity of who we truly are. So that identity, the false identity, is an ego identity. And that is the identity that we carry so strongly. And that false identity is uh, what we engage with to, to sign this contract, because our true nature of who we really are is not bound by these contracts. It's only when we identify with that contract, and that identification comes from the ego. And so, therefore, the divine spark within this body, is actually not the one to sign the contract. What do you think about that? Because an identity that is given to us, the contract that is given to us, the soul doesn't sign that contract. It is the ego signing that contract. Because our karmic reaction in this world is only activated when the ego is activated. If there is no ego, there is no karma. This whole cycle does not move. So this contract is not activated unless the ego signs the contract. So what do you think about that, Govindapriya?
That is much closer to my heart, this answer. And I feel like a lot of times in my life, this contract shows up, and I see it as sometimes as a theater show, and I'm an actor performing this theater show. And my role is to carry out this contract I signed and make a beautiful drama that people came to watch or whatever and participate in that. But I do know that after the show, and even though I'm playing my part really, really, really hard, full of like, let's say we're making a show of Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. We all love that, even though we know it's a tragedy, but we will go to theater to watch it. And I would be honored to be a actor in that show and put up a costume and be a beautiful Juliet, and Romeo sings beneath my window, and I would be so into this story. And after the story, I would take off the costume, and I know I'm not that Juliet, even though I provided the experience for everybody to enjoy this particular story. This was our contract. So sometimes, yeah, that's close to this, what you were saying, and this life and these contracts that we have signed feels like a theater show to me. And sometimes I love the part, sometimes I hate the part, but at the end of the day, I'm not this part. And that's it. Hopefully, I can think about it like this.
I like the theater part. That metaphor is very relevant. What do you think, Gora?
You know what I'm asking myself? Through the ego, sign the contract, but it has to be a purpose behind those contracts. It has to be some meaning which is helpful for our real identity as a soul. We are conditioned with this body, we are conditioned, and you say that this is the false identity that we are carrying, but we do live in this body, and it feels real. So I just like to believe those contracts, many of them, they have a purpose for the soul.
Okay. So the contracts have a meaning for the soul.
I'm hoping that that when we're going through those contracts, that's something that learn that help us to relieve our own identity. Maybe sometimes to just notice how nonsense it is.
How
Sometimes
about
maybe to notice how they are not serving us. Maybe sometimes to connect more with the soul, sometimes to learn more, to learn how to love our family, you know and I think that through those roles, the theater roles that Govinda is telling about, I think there is a message there for us. And it's helpful to not identify, to always have some distance, but at the same time to go through.
Yeah, as you experience everything as Juliet. Wow. Or next time I'm a Hamlet, or next time I'm some other part or some other, but those experience while I'm playing the show also transform my heart. So there is a value to the playing of the role. But also there is a value of taking down the costume and realizing, oh, I can step out of this contract.
Mhm.
Because what would be an alternative to say, You know what? My real identity is actually that I'm spirit soul. That I'm not material, only body is material. So I have those contracts, but I'm not gonna live by and to ignore them. I think we cannot ignore them as long as we have this body, as we live in the society, as long as we want to be part of the society. But I think the sentence that Govinda said, it's very important to have acknowledge about that, that it's not really real and maybe not so relevant, and not that doesn't have this how you say it, it doesn't have such a deep that our all life hangs on those theater plays. It helps us maybe to have a little distance to observe it, like from the side. This is happening to me. Okay, let's do the best out of that. Don't be crushed by it.
Very, very good point, Gora. Thank you. And I was just thinking how, you know, of course, we have these contracts that we have signed, and it's not directly us, but it's the ego who signed it. But then there is something that sustains this contract. And in the Bhagavad Gita, we study when this beautiful dialogue between two friends, Krishna and Arjuna, they're talking about the three modes of material nature. That it is these three modes of material nature that actually sustains this contract. Because say someone, depending on what level of the mode of operation they're operating from, it drives the pattern in how we live that contract. Because we have an opportunity to actually upgrade the contract and get more clarity and actually be free from that contract. We can sign out of that contract. And that's the beautiful thing that I really like about Krishna's advice to his friend Arjuna. He said, hey, yes, you have signed this contract. You understand how this contract works. You know who signed it. There's definitely a higher purpose behind it. Why don't you take a good look at this contract and to see how to back out of a contract? In the United States, when you buy a house or when you buy a car, they give you a 30-day warranty that you can actually, after 30 days of driving the car, you can return it back and get your money back. And most things that you purchase that have a contract, there is a way to get out of it. But what happens sometimes is that when we sign that contract, we become attached to it, to that role, that identity that comes with the contract, that we can't get out of this contract. So the good thing that I learned in the United States, in India, you buy something, you can't return it back. There's no money back guarantee. In the United States, you get 30 days money back guarantee. I learned that when you buy an airline ticket, you get 24-hour warranty. Like you can cancel it in 24 hours and you get your money back. But Krishna tells Arjuna that, hey, you can also get out of this contract. There is a ladder. There is the mode of ignorance, tamas, the darkness. There's mode of passion, and there's mode of goodness. These three modes sustain this contract. So why don't you re-look at this contract with better lighting and more clarity, which is in the mode of goodness, then you can actually sign out of this contract and you can break free from this contract. I think Nita wants to add something. Nita or Durga, I see your hands up. You're going to tell us about how to sign out of the contract?
Now we have a question because can it also be the other way around, that the soul has a contract? We don't know anything about that. And then you are like last Friday when we had this fire ceremony and we were having the fire ceremony and this wedding. And, at least to me, it felt more like I am in some theater, which I don't know anything about. I don't know where I am. I don't even know who I am. And yet I'm in this play. So I have no idea what this can it also be the other way around, that there's a contract you don't know anything about?
Good question. So yeah, we're going to talk about a separate contract. There is definitely two contracts. There is a contract that we have in this world, and there is a contract that we signed before we came into this world. And that's defined by prarabdha karma and aprarabdha karma. So we may have to discuss that next week's topic of how to see the contract that was signed before this life. We're talking about the contract in this life. So you have a good point there, Durga Devi. It may be a whole nother subject, which will be a good subject to cover, actually. But so this contract that I'm talking about in this life that we are signed, and that we have an escape route, because sustaining this contract, there is a way out. So Gora, what do you think about that?
I love that. It's great. And I'm also thinking there is way out, and I think, but still, Krishna told Arjuna to fight. He didn't tell him like to ignore his duty and his contract. He told me go and fight, but don't be attached. I'm there. I'm controlling everything. Like it's almost go there and fight in life, but don't worry about it. Is it something that you are thinking about, Veda?
You're
About
talking about the observer consciousness.
yeah, to do your duty, to love your kids, to be a teacher, to do your job, but not be attached. Like don't identify with those roles, this contract. Is this something you are thinking about, or?
Yes, yes, that's mode of goodness. That's the first consciousness that allows you to get a very clear light as to what this contract looks like, and then you can cancel the contract. Because from goodness, that is the most clear picture that we get about life, and the clarity in our consciousness that we can actually see how everything is happening. And we are not the real doers, and there is an ego who's actually signed the contract. And the life that we live is actually a life of the ego identity that's actually living, and is not really us. So that consciousness that you're speaking about is the consciousness of goodness, of sattva. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Yes,
Govinda Priya,
exactly.
what do you think? Oh, Gora, go ahead.
No.
You can feel question marks over my head immediately. As you were speaking, I was like, but I know there is a classification, what are the free gunas, but sometimes we are at a junction at our life where we do stuff or take action that a lot of people would call tamastic. And I feel in my heart, this is what I need to do, and it's sattvic for me. So who determines in which mode am I acting?
Very good question.
Determination is up to the individual. When you're able to observe, there's not an external observer, you are the observer. So we understand when Krishna tells his friend Arjuna, he said, hey, check this out. If you operate in the mode of goodness, you get clarity. Jnana Deepena Bhaswata in Sanskrit, it really says the torch of light is looking at everything with the lens of goodness. Then you become an observer, and so then you get an opportunity to actually, sign out of this contract. Because the way out of this contract is to understand the very nature of the self is bhakti, is love. Love is the way to exit this contract. It seems very hippie and simple, because when you're in that mode of the three modes of material nature, the principle of love is taken out of the equation, because the identity that signed the contract is the ego. And the ego is not filled with love. It's an identity. It's a contract that is fully activated under the realms of karma and gunas. So when we want to escape this contract, the way to do it is actually to find meaning in life. And the real meaning of life is to really understand deep down in ourselves. There is a reservoir of love that once we have access to that, which we all do, whether we make the effort, that's a uh, different question. But the way out of this contract is to understand that we are loving creatures, and by design, we are meant to be in love and share that love with others. Because the whole notion of being free from this contract, it requires a different level of consciousness. And that consciousness is actually not a material consciousness. Consciousness of love is actually a divine consciousness. So this is what I understand, that everything happens in this world and it has nothing to do with me. It's just happening through us. We're these beautiful instruments in this world. It's happening. We are just a little part and parcel of this creation of love. So that's where the contract ends. You're free. What do you think about that, Gora?
I think that it sounds wonderful.
But you're not
Yeah.
convinced.
No, 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 not at all. I think that big part of it, it's being kind to ourselves. I think that is a process. It's not that
Yes,
sit and then you read. It's actually ego, and I love everyone and love. I think also that love can be in three gunas, in this material world, that you can love in tamas, and you can love in passion,
sure.
and you can love in sattva. And I think that we should be very, very kind to ourselves to allow us to go through this process, and that it is a slow process. And this is some thought that I have, because it sounds wonderful. It sounds so easy when you say it like that, but I know that it's not easy. I know that it takes years of hard work, and it's not one day decision. It's like everyday decision, every moment decision. So I think the part of it, it's being kind to ourselves, allow us to not judge us, to identify with this ego, to be attached to that, to acknowledge these conditions we are in, and slowly go through this goal of life, something like that. Because it's not cheap, it's not,
Yeah, love is not cheap. It
yeah,
requires, in the practice of bhakti, it teaches us how we must, every moment of our life, think of it as the very last moment that we have, and we must engage with the true essence of who we are, and that's what bhakti is. That's what real love is. So I agree that it is not an easy process, but it's also not a difficult process. The difficulty is the contract that we signed, and how to actually consciously recognize the contract we signed and how to make an effort to get out of this contract. And that process of recognizing and getting out of it is a lengthier process than actually making that choice and decision to get out of this contract. Because that, I think anybody would want to get out of that contract, because to be in love is absolute freedom. Bhakti is synonymous with freedom. Bhakti means love, and that's where freedom is. Anything that is not love in the mode of passion and ignorance are all transactional and exploitative. So real love, bhakti, is what we're talking about, is truly unconditional. I think, okay, we have 8 more minutes. There was a bunch of questions. Keshavi, Angelica had a bunch of questions. You want to read, and maybe we can at least visit those questions. We may not have any answers, but
I didn't see any from Angelica. John P is saying, can we hear an example of what these contracts entail? I don't know if you already answered it.
okay. What do you mean, John? Can you explain that question, please?
Yeah, well, I mean, just what do these contracts entail? Meaning, what are they? What do they make us do or think?
Okay, good question. So the first contract we talked about is, we in Sanskrit we call them the samskars, the impressions that bind you. When we're young, you know, you do good in school, good grades, good behavior, no problems, everything's good, and you get compliments. And those compliments are contracts that are creating, I'm loved, I am perfect. And then that propels you to excel yourself and exhaust yourself, overwork and overgive and overthink. And all of that is out of what? Why are you doing it? Because that contract was given to you as a kid. And so you're just now living that contract. So those are repeated emotional experiences. They become very strong impressions, some scars, and then it becomes part of your life. You can't not live that contract. So that's in yoga language, we call it the samskaras. And the ahankara, the ego identity, the one who signs the contract, is to identify with that contract as though you are the contract and you have to live it. And you believe that that is your identity. I am a software engineer. That is my identity. And I have to be number one. So that's the second layer, how the identity that actually signs that contract. Because initially it was just given to you. And then you identified with that identity. And that force that maintains that identity are the three modes of material nature, the gunas. Because when you're in the mode of passion, you just want to do because you have to excel. And someone who's operating in the mode of ignorance, may just slug it through and maybe not even want to work and just quit. And then mode of goodness is really observing that I'm not the doer. And then we discussed about how that this contract is beautiful to get out of by recognizing that what I'm really seeking through all my efforts of this contract is actually find validation and love in my identity. And that comes through understanding what this love, what bhakti is all about. I think you asked the question, and the third one is the gunas. First one is the samskaras. Samskaras are the contract. And then the ahankara is the signer of that identity, that contract. And the gunas is that maintains that identity. And bhakti is love is the way to get out of that contract. John, did that make any sense?
Yeah, I'm getting it now. Thank you.
Okay. What other questions did we have that didn't make any sense and needs more attention?
I don't see any other questions in the chat. Angelica, did you have one? I saw you were off mute.
Well,
And
yeah. Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm driving.
yes.
So I was thinking if the contract is either chosen by us, so we can work through karma, or given to us so we can work through karma, and that's how we kind of start, then it's really not about the contract. It's what we do with what we chose or what we were given, isn't it?
So we're talking about two contracts. We're talking about the contract in this life. It's the
Correct.
impressions that were given to you, you were told as a kid. So all those identities that was given to you, the contract that was given to you, you do good, you're complimented. It builds your identity. The contract is becoming more and more etched, and you live based on that. And so that is what we're talking about. So you get that in this life, you get that contract, and that contract, then you start to believe that you are that identity, that you are that property manager, you are that IT professional. You identify so much with that. That is the ahankara, the next stage of the contract that actually signed the contract. It was given to you, and now you have officially signed it because you've identified with it and you're living it.
Correct, but the idea is not to live it, the idea is to break it, correct?
Yes. And that's the recognition part with the three gunas, the three modes goodness, passion, and ignorance. And so, goodness, when you come to that stage, you get clarity. Like, why am I doing this? Why do I do what I do? That question in itself puts a pause to our very existential question. And then we can actually make effort to see how to break this contract. Does that make any sense, Angelica?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Angelica. Sven, you want to add something?
Yeah, so am I audible via this microphone?
Yes, we can all hear you.
Perfect. So something that has been coming up while listening to this, and I don't think has been completely touched upon, is that when we get these contracts from our parents or our school or whatever it is, it seems that the reason why we get them is because those people are also operating on a contract and they're kind of passing it on to us to the degree that they have not worked through and released the contract themselves, right?
Correct.
And that kind of seems to point to a purpose in our like viewing the contract with love and releasing with love where it's necessary or changing the contract, not just for ourselves, but also for like kind of resolving the total amount of contract that's not resonant with the collective, you know? What are
Hmm.
what are any thoughts on that? I'd be very
I
curious to
love it.
hear.
I love it. You're fully zoomed out. I love it. We were zooming in and out, in and out. So it was really nice that you zoomed out. So, yes, this contract that we have in this material world is actually a generational contract. Just because your father signed it, you also signed it. And sometimes if you do not break away from this contract, your kids are going to be living that same contract. So it's important to recognize and really break that cycle of signing these contracts that is not ours to live. And so that's why we do this practices, the spiritual practices on a regular basis and create sanghas, create communities of people that will actually have this deep discussions and together, collectively together, we'll try to sign out of those contracts. That's what Sangha means. Sangha literally means when people work together to break free from the generational contracts. Because this collective upliftment and upgradation of consciousness is what is needed, because that's what gives us strength to sign out of these contracts. But I love where you're going with this. So thank you, Swen. That was really beautiful.
Can I ask one more small question about it that really intrigues me?
Sure.
Also, thank you for the explanation. It's really beautiful. So this also points to the question for me, like, okay, so then this is passed on generationally, upon generationally. But then ultimately, there's a source, you know, if we go back. And I have my ideas about the source, but I'm very curious to hear if you have any ideas about kind of where it originates from.
Yeah. When we study the yoga text, they give us a very clear indicator where it originates. It originates actually from envy. Because in our constitutional spiritual spark of love, we actually are always meant to be loved. And it is only when we decide that I don't want to love you anymore, I want to love someone else. When we actively make that choice, or I'm envious of the fact that you're living a loving life and I need to have my own world of love and want to get out of that cosmic cycle of love, because God, when he or she creates this universe, it's created out of love because we wanted to be out of that. We wanted to have our own loving world. We actually have chosen to get out of that planet of love that we originally all belong to. And so because of that, that activation of karma takes place. Because it is only that identity separate from love that creates karmic cycle movement. When you're in love, karma is not active. Karma is only active on the ahankara stage. Karma remains inactive. So therefore, there is tremendous emphasis given by sages how to always remain in the state of love through service, through exchange of sharing each other's divine space that we all, each and every one of us contain within ourselves. That's what Sangha is, to share the divine container that is within us. So, yeah, beautiful question. Cynthia, you want to add something to this? You had your hands up, and then we're going to have to end this call.
I just want to thank you, and my questions were answered. And I have so much to ponder on and journal about. This has been beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. It was so nice. Gora and Govinda Priya, I appreciate you bailing me out. We are in Wiesbaden, Germany, and we're going to have beautiful events here. And then I go back to Netherlands to do another event, and then I fly back to the US. And in the Netherlands, we had such a blast, just meeting such incredible people, such people with heart and such resilience. And it was just amazing, actually, So I'm grateful to all the.
Can you hear me? I said
Yes,
there's a couple questions in the chat.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and they're
I
good
don't know if we
questions.
have time. We ran out of time. Maybe next week, because next week we'll talk about the spiritual contract. This is a contract of this life, but there's another contract that we have, the spiritual contract. But for me, I was just like completely blown away by my journey in Netherlands with such incredible people every single day. Our body was completely thrashed, but the heart was so nourished that somehow the body recuperated so quick, because so much love and so much genuine heart-centered interest in understanding the depths of life and the real journey of the soul. So anyway, Keshavi, maybe we'll continue with the questions next week. Any other announcements before we leave? Okay. Thank you all very much. I'm so grateful to be with each and every one of you. This is such a treat. And Gora and Govinda Priya, you guys are such troopers. I'm totally in awe and deep love and appreciation for both of you. And thank you all very much from all over the world. Please let us stay connected. And I will be eagerly waiting to see you all again next week. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
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 Love y'all.
Namaste.